What's up, wizards? It's Dev from Mtg, and you know what? Standard. Bad. That's what I said in the last video, and I meant it, even though I would take the positive route there and go on to name a whole bunch of cards that I really like in this format. But of course, there are a bunch of folks in the comments section, wouldn't you know it, that want to see the exact same video, but the opposite. So that's what we're going to do. That's what we're gathered here for today. That's right. I knew you'd want to see it, and there were enough Emperor Palpatines down there in the comments section like, yes, let the hate flow through you, that I figured it'd be a pretty good little video to do content-wise, maybe get a couple of clicks. And there are a bunch of cards in this standard that I legitimately do not care for very much, and it'd be fun to talk about how I don't like them. So let's go ahead and talk about top 10 standard cards I don't care for at all, in fact. And I'm your favorite Magic Channel's favorite Magic Channel. Best believe that the professor go bananas for my deck tech. And we're back, but there's a couple of things I should probably say before we go ahead and get started with this Lisky, because it's going to be a barn burner. I got to set it up. Now, first of all, go ahead and say this real quick. I haven't seen them down there in a while, but apparently they're starting back up on Magic Content Creators channel, so I should go ahead and let you know. If you see anybody down there in the comments section pretending to be me, offering you free stuff or whatever, it's not me. I'm not doing any kind of giveaway. It's some sort of scammer. They're a terrible person. Report them and move on. Second of all, and far more important to remember for the content today, is that this video is kind of divided into two parts, right? 10 through 6 are all cards I just kind of generally don't like. I guess they're fine. Sort of sick of playing against them, but you know, whatever. And then 5 through 1, those are cards I genuinely loathe, cannot stand, never want to play against again. So kind of a little bit of a two-part list, so just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as we go through here. And finally, very quickly, if I point out a card that you absolutely love, I'm not disparaging you in any way. I just don't like that card. You're fine. You're great. You're probably amazing. What a wonderful person you probably are, but I don't like the card that you like. I'm sorry. We can still be friends. But hey, are you ready to start this list? Yeah, I bet you were ready 3 minutes ago. Sorry about all that. Anyway, let's start with an honorable mention, which I had to go looking for, actually, because I looked through every card in Standard, and I found exactly 10 cards to go on this list. And I was like, oh, let's produce it. And then I remembered, oh yeah, honorable mention. We gotta have an HM in here. So I looked through every card in Standard again, and eventually came up with Sure Jukai Naturalist. Now this entry could just as easily be Generous Visitor or Kami of Transience or something. Michiko's Reign of Truth. It could be a bunch of different cards to represent the Enchantress subtype. And I say that as someone that loves Enchantress. Like earlier today on Twitter, I said that I want my second real commander deck to be a Sithis deck because I love Enchantress. I've built a bunch of commander decks, but they're all glorified Blood Artist decks. You know, I built Judith, I built Sir Conrad, I built Illisil Core, obviously, if you know me, right? But those are all just kind of Blood Artist decks. So I count the Sithis deck that I'm kind of looking at building right now as my second real commander deck. So I've always loved Enchantress. The first real card I ever fell in love with was Verduran Enchantress, almost 30 years ago now. So I have a lot of affection for the Enchantress subtype, which is probably one of the reasons it's all the way down here at HM, right? Is how much am I really annoyed by this deck? Turns out kind of a lot. When you do see it, it still causes me to roll my eyes, basically out of muscle memory. It's like the deck hasn't been that popular in 3 or 4 months now, but whenever I do see turn 2 Naturalist, I don't get mad, but I am kind of like, oh, really? Come on. But hey, everybody, it's time to start the actual list now. Are you ready for that kind of commitment? Let's find out. Number 10 is Rafin. I gotta say, I do feel a little sorry for Rafin. It's taken a bit of a hit in the playability department lately. You know, cut down kills it for 2 mana, but that's pretty low mana. And we're in the kind of format where everyone's packing 2 mana instant speed, kill on sight removal for stuff like Shieldred and I guess Phyrexian Obliterator and a couple of other things, right? So a lot of Doomblades being played in a bunch of different decks right now, and Rafin's just not great in a format like that. But this can come down and have immediate impact on the table, draw a card or 2 on turn 3 if your opponent went 1-drop, 2-drop, right? So this can sometimes have massive effect on the game state, filter your opponent a couple of cards, get them the lands they need or pitch the ones they don't, get them, the actual good cards in their deck and make their creatures bigger before you can ever really respond to it if you did something on your turn, right? So, and now you've got Skrelv to protect this thing, and you see that every now and again in the Esper Legends deck, which is making a comeback. You'll see another card or 2 from that thing on this list, but not necessarily just because of the Esper Legends deck. There are cards that are in that deck that are great outside of it as well. And that's why they're higher up than Rafin on this list. But I feel like Rafin still has to be on this list because if you don't have the removal for it the turn it comes down, it just kind of becomes this unbeatable thing that runs away with the game. And that's a little annoying, I think. Number 9 is Corpse Appraiser. And I need to again reiterate that this first half of the list is all cards that are kind of like fine, but I'm a little irritated by. You know what I mean? There's definitely a scale going on here. Rafin makes me roll my eyes just a little bit, and this makes me sigh. I'm not sure what the next card makes me do, but these cards definitely make me progressively more upset as we move through the list. And I'm not that upset at Corpse Appraiser, but when it does come down, I'm kind of like, man, you're a 3-mana 3/3 that cast Anticipate. You put a really good body on the table that stops a lot of early game stuff, trades with it, or sometimes just like completely blockades the little guys, right? And you put like the best from the top 3 in my opponent's hand. Like, geez, that's a ridiculous amount of value on one guy. And you can copy it with Fable and do the thing again, and you can remove like important stuff from my graveyard with it. The card just does a little bit of everything. And I said in the last video that I could never really be mad at like Blood Tithe Harvester, even though it's like super played and gives you all this value. I just like the guy. Corpse Appraiser, I don't afford those same luxuries too. I want to like this because it's a Grixis dude that has like ridiculous ETB value. And that seems like the kind of exact thing that I would like, but I think I've had it played against me like 30 too many times to really cut it that much slack anymore. Like, screw this card. Number 8 is Stalia, and now on the scale of noises I make when a card hits the table, we're up to a light grumble, right? Kind of a, Stalia, right? One of those, because pretty much every time this card does hit play, almost no matter what, without fail, I've got a 2-mana removal spell in my hand, and I'm on the draw. Definitely, right? So what this does is turn all of your Doomblades into Dark Banishings, which is a far worse card, it turns out, especially when your opponent's really putting pressure on you. But it's not just the removal that takes out Thalia that gets more expensive, right? It's that Wedding Announcement or Fable of the Mirror Breaker you're going to play. It's that Wandering Emperor that gets you out of this whole jam, or that other Planeswalker that gets you out of this thing. It's that Depopulate that now costs 5 mana to cast. It's just a whole spread of things that would normally save you from losing the game when you're playing anything other than a Thalia deck, are more or less completely unplayable before you would otherwise die once a Thalia is on the table. I don't know why they decided to bring this card back. I was initially kind of excited for it. That's probably why. But now that Thalia has dropped on turn 2 in so many games over the last year or so, I'm about done. I'm about done with it. I guess I'm done with this. Number 7 is by far the newest card on the list. As a matter of fact, it's the only card from the newest set. It's Venerated Rot Priest. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing. This card hasn't had that long to get on my nerves, but this is kind of a massive eye roll for a bunch of reasons to me. Now, first of all, this card did see a good amount of play in the actual ladder on ranked for the first like week or two even that Brothers War was out. And then most of those people packed up and moved over to my play queue. And when it comes to my play queue, I'm a bit of a NIMBY, right? Like not in my backyard. I hate knowing that as soon as it hits the table, there's going to be a second one right behind it because for some reason these decks always draw 2 or 3 copies of Rot Priest in the first like 10 cards of their library. But they somehow also draw every Shore Up and March of Swirling Mists and Tyvar Stand that they'll ever need to keep these things alive. I'm not saying that you lose every single game to these decks. There's definitely a reason that they kind of got kicked down to the play queue after a couple of weeks. These aren't the strongest decks in the world. But when it comes to just like basic irritation and eye rollability, there's really not a whole lot in Standard right now that matches a turn 1 Venerated Rot Priest, except for maybe an additional turn 2 Venerated Rot Priest, which tends to happen an awful lot. Number 6 is Reckoner Bankbuster. Now, if this was just like Maze Mind Tome, I don't think I would be annoyed by it at all. I really liked Maze Mind Tome. I thought it was fair, and I think Reckoner Bankbuster is fair, but obviously we're approaching the naughty half of the list here, and this is kind of the last card before we get into stuff that I think is a legitimate problem a little bit in Standard, and Reckoner Bankbuster is not. It just isn't a legitimate problem in Standard. The problem arises when your card drawing engine, which is totally fair and costs the right amount of mana and blah, 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 and you can't do it forever. It's totally fair. But when that card drawing engine is also a 2-mana 4/4, it could be a bit of a problem when your opponent goes like turn 2 Bankbuster, turn 3, I don't know, Corpse Appraiser or Graveyard Trespasser or Tenacious Underdog or Blood Tithe Harvester or like literally any other creature that like most of these decks play. And then they can just swing for 4. You see, they played a 2-mana 4/4 that draws cards. Who thought this was a good idea? The card is just a little bit bonkers. And I don't think it's too strong for standard. It's just that you see it in everything because it can go in everything. You know, it's a colorless card. So you see it in everything again, from mono black to Grixis to mono white to 5 other different decks. So I guess I just see this card so much every day that I'm just kind of sick of it, even if it is like undeniably fair. So let's move on to the half of the list where there's a bunch of cards that I think might actually be problems. But one of those has to be the least a problem. That makes sense, right? Now, number 5 is what I'm getting at here. It might surprise some of you with honestly how low it is or how high it is. It's in the middle of the list. And honestly, I would imagine some of you would think that it would be closer to number 1. But no, I think that Fable of the Mirror Breaker is right there in the middle. Now, don't get me wrong. This is another card that I'm just like really sick of. I hate that if my opponent is playing red mana, then you can basically bet any amount of money that on turn 3, they're going to play Fable of the Mirror Breaker. And you'll probably be right. You'll win some money on that bet. Any deck with red is going to want this because it's going to do something they want, and very often like 4 things that they want. And that's kind of a problem, don't get me wrong, but I'm cutting it some slack here because I think that almost everything it does is kind of cool from a brewer standpoint, right? It's not that it does anything powerful. It's just this massively important role player that lets you, again, filter, ramp, create bodies to like soak up your opponent's removal, make more bodies with the reflection, get ETB triggers. It sounds like a lot, but it's all just kind of like one of the more important gears in the machine without being the actual engine itself. And I kind of like that about it. You know, I don't think this card is that imposing or annoying, but I will say that it's, again, just kind of everywhere. It's kind of in an awful lot of decks, and I too roll my eyes a bit at seeing Fable of the Mirror Breaker. But we're at number 4, so we really got to start playing the hits here. It is Shelly. You expected her eventually, but I imagine some of you are surprised she's not, again, a little farther down here. The reason Shelly's not in the top 3 is I actually don't think that she's quite as busted as we've all kind of memed her out to be as content creators. As a matter of fact, I'm not complaining that much about Shieldred as a card or even her effect on the game state. I more care about what her effect has demonstrably been on the format at large. You see, not only are there tons of decks like mono black, red black, green black, Grixis, there's just so many decks. Esper, the Esper Legends deck, you know, all these decks are going to play Shieldred. So there's not only a glut of decks that play this, that increases the number of times per day you have to see the stinking thing, and that's just kind of lame. But also, in terms of its effect on the format, we are in the kind of format that is, again, largely as a result of this card, a removal check format. And I'm not saying that a removal check format is inherently bad, but any format that you must absolutely, synergy be damned or whatever, include these like 2-mana instant speed answers to Shieldred, or else, you know, then that can end up feeling a little bit samey, especially during deck building, when you basically have to devote 4 slots to this one card. Now, incidentally, including that 2-mana removal that kills Shieldred also kills a bunch of other creatures, which is nice. You want the ability to kill creatures in your deck. So I'm not saying you wouldn't play removal otherwise, but even in decks that are extremely high synergy or decks that are, you know, very aggro focused, like mono red, for instance, you have got to, especially mono red, you have got to include a way in your deck to kill this thing, or you're going to have a really hard time winning like 40% or more of your games. And that I don't love. Again, the effect of the card itself, the text box and the power toughness, I'm not that worried about. It's the, again, demonstrable effect that it's had on the format at large in how we build our decks, right? That I kind of have an issue with when it comes to Shelly. But now we're in the top 3, baby. Number 3 is the Wandering Emperor. Even more annoying to me than Shieldred, honestly. Mostly because it's an instant speed action, and 9 times out of 10, those are better and more irritating a card like Shelly, which is just like a big dumb body on the table. You know what I mean? But Shelly does punish you just for playing Magic, which is one of the things I don't like about her. But Wandering Emperor kind of does that a little bit too. Not as much as Shieldred does, but just like, oh, you're attacking? Cool, I'm going to throw this down, exile your guy, gain life. I guess you lose now. They drop a land on turn 4 and say go. Again, the predictability is extremely high, and that keeps coming up in this video, doesn't it? Isn't it extremely predictable they're going to play that Shieldred on 4? Isn't it extremely predictable they're going to play that Fable of the Mirror Breaker? And if they drop Plains number 4 on turn 4 and tell you to go, you probably shouldn't attack. Because the reason that no one ever actually attacks with a Shieldred in this format, and Wandering Emperor is a big part of that, but at the same time, even though it's pretty easy to play around, that just again plays into the predictability argument. Oh, you see it coming? That's called predictability, and it's not fun. And I know that a big part of especially Standard, because there's such a small card pool, is knowing the card pool and knowing what your opponent's available options to play are and blah, blah, blah. So I'm not saying that just because you can predict your opponent's play patterns means that it's always a bad thing. Sometimes it's actually kind of a selling point for Standard. The problem is when it happens every time. It happens every time they have 4 untapped mana. You know exactly what they're doing. It's the most eye-rolling thing in the world, right? So, and that's on a list full of very eye-rolling things, and this is way up there, but I honestly can't tell you it's the most eye-rolling thing in the world. That would be number 1. Now, number 1, I again think that some of you who know me are going to be a little bit surprised by this, because number 1 is not Invoke Despair. Number 2 is Invoke Despair. Now, don't get me wrong, I totally hate this card, and that is a word that I have tried to stray away from as much as possible throughout the course of this video. I don't really want to use it, but I'm not sure there's a better word. I abhor Invoke Despair, and I've been pretty clear about that. It's a card I talk about and gripe about an awful lot. This card definitely lives up to its name more than just about anything in Standard. There's not much that invokes more despair in me than this, but at the end of the day, I decided there was one card. Go ahead and guess it down there in the comments section. But anyway, I do, don't get me wrong, hate this card. And that's a word that I've tried to stray away from using pretty much this entire video. It's not a word that I like to use, but I'm not sure there's a better word for my feelings about Invoke Despair. It's a card that'll just catch you up all in one. And I know that sometimes mid-range players, control players really like having a card like that. But when I've done a whole bunch of hard work getting that Kaya into play and getting that Wedding Announcement or Fable of the Mirror Breaker or whatever, you know, that reflection of Kiki Chiki to flip over, I don't like that there's a single card in Standard that turns around all of that hard work. I don't think sweepers are inherently, you know, disgusting. I don't think sweepers are inherently unfair, but there are certain times where I think taking a bunch of different permanent types off the battlefield, and of course, let's say you don't have those permanent types to sacrifice, well, then it just pays them with cards. That's just, like, there were so many different ways you could have printed this, and I think they landed on one of the absolute worst ways they could have, that this card could have ended. Ultimately, again, just hate cards that completely blow away all of the things that someone was excited to do in a game of Magic, and this is one of the cards that do that. But now that I've said that like 3 different times, you might have a pretty good idea of what my number 1 is. That's right. I fully expected when I thought about this list for Invoke Despair to be the number 1 card. But like the more I really got to thinking about it, looking at all 10 of the cards on this list, Farewell just kept popping out at me as an insanely unfair Magic card. Let me just say that what I think Magic is, actually no, let me back up a little bit and say, I think this is more accurate. What I like most about Magic is, no pun intended, the magic, right? That excitement that you feel when you first see a card, you open it from a booster, you see it at your buddy's house and you trade for it. You see it, you know, on Arena because you opened it or something like that. You see it in spoiler season and you're like, I'm making a deck with that card. I've got combo ideas with that. You go to EDH Rec or you go to Scryfall or whatever, you look at content creators and you get more combo ideas and you order all those cards and you get them on Arena and you put your thing together and you are going to do this exciting thing, whether it's synergy with creatures or like a fun thing you want to do with enchantments or whatever. It doesn't, you want to reanimate something, it doesn't matter, right? You just have a really cool idea and you want to see it happen. So you go in there and you play a few turns and you start to do the thing and you're getting excited and you feel good about it. It might actually happen this game. And then your opponent just lands Farewell. And it feels so much worse than a sweeper. Don't get confused. I want to say clearly that I am not complaining about the existence of sweepers. I've been playing against Wrath of God for 28 years. The first day I played Magic, I played against Wrath of God, and yeah, back then I thought it was unfair, but nowadays I understand the importance of a card like a sweeper, but something like Farewell, a little too far. Because again, it does not matter what you're trying to do, whether you're trying to get value out of your graveyard or reanimate a big fat guy or whatever. If you're trying to do stuff with artifacts and or enchantments, or even if you are just trying to play creatures, it really doesn't matter what your game plan is unless you're just on Planeswalkers or something. Farewell will screw those game plans up. That's what it's designed to do. And yeah, I get it, control players. I am advocating for taking away the big panic button that you wouldn't win near as many games without, the one card that has probably forced more scoops than any other in the last year of you playing your blue-white control deck. I get it. I'm advocating to take away a card that you absolutely need to win the game. But at the end of the day, is that not your entire play philosophy as a control player? Is to take away the cards that matter most to your opponent? I'm just doing what you do. I'm being cheeky, and I am just kidding. I feel like I have to say that. I've learned personally that control players are a bunch that take themselves very seriously, but one way or the other, I think the card is just a bit too much, and so do a bunch of other people. And finally, I feel like I just got to say that the very existence of the card in our current reality is dumb. It's stupid that the card is here at all, and whoever designed it probably shouldn't be designing Magic cards for a few reasons. First of all, it's just lazy design. It just really is. Somebody was like, what if we just had a thing that exiles everything except Planeswalkers? And somebody's like, yeah, stamp it, print that thing. That sounds good. So very lazy design. And also, it's infuriating design. The fact that this card can be played, I play standard, where I play a few creatures and a planeswalker, maybe an enchantment every now and again, and I'm still super annoyed when they exile every single thing, graveyards included. I cannot imagine if I was in an hour-long game of Commander and somebody played this card shouldn't exist when Commander exists as a format. If I had spent literally the last 45 minutes doing a thing, and so had the other two people at the table, and the fourth person cast Farewell, they have to leave. They have to leave. But hey, I guess I'm actually done this time, you guys. I was going to come in and record this one real quick. I was going to bang this one out, 20 minutes, something like that. No, it's been an hour and 27 minutes, according to Audacity. So I guess I had more to say about these than I thought I did. However, I feel like I could have been way more vitriolic. I didn't let some of these cards really have it the way I wanted to, There's a reason for that. If you look late 2021, I think, at the channel, you'll see a video titled the top X worst things about Magic in 2021, where I got like really upset and red-faced about some things and just really remarked, let's put it, on a couple of different topics. And then the very next video I released on the channel is I had a heart attack. So I'm going to try. Nowadays, I try not to get too worked up about stuff like this. You know what I mean? But all that said, there are definitely still cards in Standard that I just kind of can't stand at all and would rather they be gone forever. This is not me advocating for banning any of these cards, but especially this top 5. If I woke up tomorrow and some of them were banned, awesome, fine, sure. I'm not going to advocate for it, but I'll take it if it happens. But ultimately, I'm just having a spot of fun. So if you see me on the street, don't tackle me too hard. You know what I mean? But anyway, just let me know how you felt about it down there in the comments section. I'm sure you will, negative or positive. You know what I mean? But one way or the other, if there's cards I didn't name that you're just totally sick of in Standard, hit me up down there in the comments section. Let me know. And also a quick little pre-apology to all the control players who I'm sure don't like me. You guys never like me, and I'm sorry for that. I just don't. Again, I don't understand the desire to crush everyone's hopes and dreams when you play a game. That sounds weird to me, but I love you anyway. You're a person, a human being, and I think you have value. But that's it, ladies and gentlemen. So just join us for more content on the channel. Can you believe it? More content. There's going to be some. Every 3 times a week for the rest of my life. But hey, at least I get to do what I love. You know what I mean? It's a great job. And I appreciate you guys letting me have it. If you want to, you can help support the channel over there on Patreon at patreon.com/SPMTG. Just $1 a month is all I ask. You'll be able to vote on what content we do around these parts. Aside from that, you can watch me play Magic on twitch.tv/SBMTGeff. SBMTGeff. It's not my name. My name is SBMTG Dev. You see it in print on your screen down there right there. It's covering up the chicken. Let me get rid of that. So there she is. She's sleepy. But anyway, that's all I got for this one. Just hit me up in the comments section. Do the YouTube stuff on the way out. Like, subscribe, blah, blah. And I will catch you cats later. I am Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.